that the campaign that Picture the Homeless is leading is a major part of, is a campaign not just for homeless people, but is a campaign that goes for the benefit of the majority of the people in the city. Homelessness is really the tip of an iceberg, and the iceberg is a big one. We call it the system every now and then. And it's a system that needs changing. It needs changing from the bottom up and from the top down. It's a situation that's getting worse, and a system whose consequences are serious today, and all of the evidence is that the situation is going to get even worse. The name of the system, we shy away from this a little bit because it's so much laden with propaganda and preconceptions. The name of the system is the housing market. What's wrong is that the allocation of the necessities of life ought not to be dictated by the market. That's the wrong way of setting public priorities, setting social priorities. And homelessness is the extreme case of what happens when you let the market run rampant. But homelessness isn't an isolated problem. And what we're after, it seems to me, and what Picture the Homeless is after, I believe, is not to create a bubble within this market in which homeless people get some kind of minimum shelter, but rather to create a system where there will be no homeless people and no need for a separate program. The figures really for New York City are overwhelming. A quarter of the people, of the renters of New York, pay more than half of their income for rent. That's an astonishing figure. What it means is that that 25% of the people of New York, percentages don't really give the right reflection. That's 500,000 people in New York, families, pay over 50% of their income for rent. That's why the level of hunger is also going up. When you pay that kind of money for rent, you can't afford food either. The latest figures that I've seen is an increasing pressure on food pantries and soup kitchens. The number of those relying on this for even minimum levels of nutrition is up 11% in 2006, and looks as if it will be up 20% this year. Those are astonishing figures. 220,000 families are overcrowded. 40,000 families have more than 1.5 persons per room. These are people that are considered not homeless, that are considered housed, but whose problems are urgent as well. 100,000 families that complain about the quality of their neighborhoods. The figures go on, and the figures are available, and they're worth looking at. And what's needed, it seems to me, is an approach that will see homelessness as part of this entire picture, and that will develop a program and build a coalition. And the 2 points that I want to end up with in a little bit of detail. One is the need for a comprehensive program, and the second is the need for a comprehensive coalition behind that program. And the program needs to include such things as a revival of public housing. There's been no public housing built in New York for over 20 years. Public housing is the only housing program, the only governmental housing program that takes housing out of the market and that is in a position to house those of the very lowest income. And it seems to me, and I'll come back to it when I talk about the coalitions, because it isn't by any means only the homeless that are concerned about public housing. There are over 100,000 people on the waiting list for public housing in New York today. And the number of public housing units is under attack and is likely to be diminishing, not increasing. So that public housing seems to me an essential part of any kind of program to deal with the urgent problems of housing. Support for nonprofit groups, community groups, cooperatives, community-based organizations that provide housing is also key. If public housing has any disadvantage, is that it is necessarily run by a bureaucracy. It happens to be a fairly efficient bureaucracy in New York City, but even better than that is resident control, tenant control, occupant control of housing. And that exists to a very significant extent in New York through a variety of nonprofit and community-based organizations. They need support. They get some subsidies. They get declining subsidies. And any program to deal with the housing problem needs also to provide for subsidies for nonprofit and community and cooperative groups. Thirdly, rent regulation. Rent regulation raises the hackles of the housing establishment precisely because it interferes with the market. That's precisely why it's a good thing, because it does interfere with the market. It prevents speculation, it prevents rent gouging, it considers the needs of tenants as well as the needs of landlords in how rents are fixed. Today, only half of all rental units are covered by rent stabilization, and less than 60,000 units are covered by rent regulation, the older and somewhat tighter form of rent control. And the number is diminishing. The support for rent stabilization and rent regulation generally needs to be part of any program that seems to me to deal with the problems of housing. Co-op and condominium control, conversion control, so that landlords, property owners will not make money out of taking housing units out of the rental housing market and selling it off to consolidate their profit all at once when they sell their units as co-ops or condominiums. This will tie in with the housing vacancy, which I want to come back to